AI is very, in that case, very low technology in a strange way. These are very often posters that are inside our exhibition. This is a film poster. The idea behind this exhibition was to have three separate themes and to have a three-act structure. I mean, I grew up when I was young with a film like Chor Machaye Shor, but I don't remember Chor Machaye Shor quite like this. The Quran, the La ilaha illallah. I mean, I think they're saying that you don't make these kinds of posters anymore in India. I was asked by Arthshila as to whether I could put together an exhibition based on Arthshila's collection of film posters. And I said very quickly that सिर्फ पोस्टरों का exhibition हो नहीं सकता, that we have to do something else, something more complicated. Welcome to Arthshila. My name is Ashish Rajadhyaksha and this is the exhibition दुनिया परछाइयों की. It's an exhibition dedicated to what they call the art of cinephilia. Cinephilia matlab cinema ka prem, or the love of cinema, which is a very curious, complicated and very important historical phenomenon, that we've had in India for a very long time, cinephilia. So I'm introducing you to a poem that we all wrote. It goes, तसव्वुरात की परछाइयाँ उभरती हैं, कभी गुमा की सूरत, कभी यकी की तरह. We've actually used a lot of the literature from Urdu poetry, but also from the theory of cinephilia. So there are, for example, a lot of artists, a lot of names, Chris Marker, Javed Akhtar, Meena Kumari, Gulzar, Peter Wallen, Raul Ruiz, Sahir Ludhianvi and Serge Dane that we have quoted in this thing. Quick background, what essentially happened was I was asked by Arthshila as to whether I could put together an exhibition based on Arthshila's collection of film posters. And I said very quickly that सिर्फ पोस्टरों का exhibition हो नहीं सकता, that we have to do something else, something more complicated. Because posters are very often of indeterminate value. It can be raddi or it can be worth a lot of money. So this is in some ways also in honor of the amateur collector of posters and so on. There were 2 or 3 things one decided quite quickly, that we will have, for one thing, we are in Okhla phase 2. And Okhla phase 2 is one of India's oldest industrial estates, but it's no longer a very functional industrial estate. Many of the industries are shut. It's become a major recycling place. There is a lot of cloth and paper recycling. There's some of the printing presses are here. And so we decided that we would actually locate this particular entire project in Okhla. That was one thing. And then one wanted to bring in a lot of old technology. So Nihal Kardam, who is a theatre person, he works in art production, and he sourced old television sets that we managed to get from old Delhi. And the last thing I wanted to do was I wanted to locate this place in this part of Delhi, which is also, as you know, next to Jamia and to Zakir Nagar, and on this side to Govindpuri. And one wanted to bring in a certain kind of an Urdu documentation, which is why I wanted to also bring in a very important art collective, which is Delhi-based Khwaab Tanha Collective, which is represented here by Shiraz Hussain. And Shiraz became a very important partner. Lastly, I wanted to bring in sound, I wanted to bring in picture images, and so we got a lot of other artists who were involved, all of whom came together basically because of the love for cinema and the love for Hindi cinema. AI is very, in that case, very low technology in a strange way. These are very often posters that are inside our exhibition, and we were looking at AI along with a lot of other technologies around the moving image, from video to digital technologies to old VHS materials, all of which actually become part of a certain cinephiliac culture of making and sharing of video material, of what used to once be cinema. This is a film poster. These are actually strips of paper that have been converted in posters materials, which have been converted using handloom technology. It's a very Okhla thing. This is actually from Noida. Papercraft. It's this organization that there is, and they have taken strips of film posters and then they have used a polyfilament yarn which is transparent to stitch them together to make, I don't know, chatais or wall works or something like that. So this is actually something we were able to source in Okhla, and very much talks to this particular culture of recycling that we were very interested in, which was actually what the cinematic image is also doing, you know, the sharing and reusing of film material. We come here to an extraordinary Urdu installation. It's by the Khwaab Tanha Collective. मैं चाहता हूँ कि Shiraz Hussain, who designed it and whose group has made this together, should say something.
तो जॉन एलिया का ही एक शेर है, हमने जाना तो हमने ये जाना, हमने जाना तो हमने ये जाना, जो नहीं है वो खूबसूरत है। तो यहाँ जब हम ये पीस कर रहे थे जॉन एलिया के शेर पे कि ज़िंदगी एक फ़न है लम्हों को, ज़िंदगी एक फ़न है लम्हों को अपने अंदाज से गंवाने का, तो हमें ज़िंदगी के अंदर जो है एक तरीके से खाली छोड़ी है और इसको भर भी रही है। और सिनेमा के सिलसिले में ये भी कह सकते हैं कि जब आदमी सिनेमा देख रहा है तो वो अपने ज़िंदगी के लम्हों को अपने अंदाज से गंवा रहा है। तो कुछ हिस्सा भरा हुआ है, कुछ हिस्सा खाली है। शेर को ज़्यादा एक्सप्लेन इसलिए भी नहीं करूँगा क्योंकि हर आदमी अपने अंदाज से जो है उसको समझता है और देखता है, और वही उसका जो है आनंद होता है, मज़ा होता है, दिलचस्पी होती है।
We are in a space in which there are a lot of media going on. We have a 6 speakers and a stereo sound which has been using a lot of Bollywood material, but which has been actually assembled by this filmmaker Yashaswini Raghunandan in Bangalore, and the sound was mixed along with Nilansh Mitra. First set of posters, which are actually very often rerun posters. So क्या होता है कि that, you know, अगर समझिए एक फिल्म अगर 65 में बनी हो, तो then you will have a set of original posters, and then when the film is remarketed and redistributed, you have second and third and fourth generation of postering that goes on. I mean, for example, you know, Dil Diya Dar Liya. This is a very recent poster by a Delhi-based poster printer called Globe Art Printers, and you get a lot of, like for example, this particular aesthetic would have come from the old poster, but this particular image of Pran or some of these images would have been taken and put in very much later. For example, this font that you get, which is in this red font with yellow border, is a kind of a characteristic of this particular kind of second or third generation of Delhi-based posters. That is a poster with a very well-known poster maker called Nachinkar. It's Ashish Mahal, and he had a very distinct visual style of poster making. Chaudhary Ka Chand and a lot of Guru Dutt's works were actually remarketed repostered in the 1970s. This is an artist called Shrikant, and this has been printed by the Nyansagar Litho Press. The idea behind this exhibition was to have 3 separate themes and to have a 3-act structure that we wanted. So this particular act is really about the idea of love and romance, the pleasurable aspects of cinema, into which the archivists' anxieties emerge. I presume everybody knows Mera Saya, but nobody would recognize this particular poster as Mera Saya. I mean, it's got a very interesting interpretation. This is like what you might in today's language call a meme, you know, almost like a meme. I mean, the Mera Saya, of course, very famously has 2 sadhana who were twin sisters, and this is the second sadhana who sings Jhumka Gira Re. But this is Sunil Dutt, who is looking at the second sadhana with his camera, you know, which is a complete reinterpretation, rehashing of the poster. This work, all this cutting and stitching and all that was done by Khwaab Tanha artists who sat and stitched this together under with the support of Kinshuk, who is a designer. when you stand here, you're looking at a 3-channel video work, which is using a lot of the film clips that we have in this exhibition. It's all framed behind by an actual archive by the Sarai Media Collective. That's there, Ravikant, whose work is at the back there. When you come to some of the, this whole thing about sexuality, seduction, the secret of films, you come to very, very interesting and bizarre deviations of posters when they come into the rerun market. For example, you have a Bobby poster now marketed as an A film. Bobby never was an A film. It becomes an adult film. This is the collection of Ravikant, a very major film archivist, and the Sarai collection. When I did the Encyclopedia of Indian Cinema, we had to assume that the cinema was dead in India, and the only thing that existed of cinema was really secondary and tertiary material like posters and booklets. So, you will have, when you look at a film like say Nazrana Pyar Ka, you will get, the credits, you will get the plot summary of these films, and of course you get some sort of the songs in Urdu, Hindi and English, which actually becomes very important cinematic information that you have to use in the absence of the film itself. In India, one of the, very, very few films compared to how many films are made in India, very few films have survived. The first floor was called Ek Aag Ka Darya Hai. That was what the theme of the first floor was. The second, we've come to a more serious floor. This is to do with evil, with revenge, with violence. You get a whole second floor. It's called Siya Raat Ke Humsafar, and you get Okhla entering the picture. The monster finally appears in a dark abandoned industrial estate, which is Okhla. There's a film that we have which has been made by Arbab Ahmed, which is actually entirely shot in approximately 100 yards of where you are standing. Okhla Dusre Sire Tak is the name of the film that you're seeing there. This is actually a series of shots that have been taken off, this is of a printing press in Okhla, but we get a lot of images of the neighborhoods of Okhla Phase 2, inside which are embedded film shots. This is actually quite a remarkable artwork that has been put together, and this and the work that you're seeing here, which is a 2-channel work using Hindi film material, are actually set to the same soundtrack. So you have 2 picture tracks set to the same soundtrack. So, you will now get Sharmila Tagore in this famous film Anupama, this song which is Kuch Kuch Aisi Bhi Baatein Hoti Hain, that you get. Many of the images now have turned quite violent. This is very often the kind of art that is here was actually made in Delhi. So this Anokhi Ada, for example, is made in by JP Printers in Delhi, which is one of the major, there's Globe Art, there's Amar for printers. All these printers are in Delhi who have made these posters. These are the cheap rerun posters that you get. And I was saying, this particular use of Hindi font and this red font that you get here, you'll get yellow font with a red border. I mean, this is, you can get a sort of a cheaper sense of another kind of aesthetic. People, full of guns and daggers and blood that you get. Shiraz bhai, this is Munir Niazi, a poem that we have, ek ojal bekali rehne do, ek rangi anbani duniya par, ek khidki ankhuli rehne do, and they've actually kept a window that's open. Shiraz, zara bataiye.
ये यहाँ खिड़की उर्दू में ये लिखा हुआ है और उसी के हिस्से में से हम बाहर देख सकते हैं. इस फ्लोर का थीम क्योंकि थोड़ा डार्क था और वायलेंस है और तमाम सारी इस तरीके की चीज़ें हैं, उसके बावजूद भी एक खिड़की जो है वो कहीं अनखुली रह गई है जिसमें से सांस ले सकते हैं
और बाहर भी देख सकते हैं, बाहर देखने की मतलब this is a very classic kind of example of this Delhi style that you get of posters, because Pran Urf Banne Khan Bhopali has become the centerpiece of the poster. He was not necessarily the main character in it, but the hero, that is Dev Mukherjee, is missing from the poster entirely. And Ashok Kumar and Nanda and others have actually been more or less sidelined by Pran. This is a very interesting kind of way in which the film itself is fundamentally reinterpreted. I think one of the important things about Indian cinema is generally the fact that we make the world's largest number of films, but very, very few films actually survive. It's a very important fact that we must mention. This is literally for technical reasons, because celluloid is seen to be fragile and doesn't last. But it is also, I think, for some other reason, which is that cinema survives in people's memory. Cinema is something that people take home with them in their memory and make what they can out of them that there is. So the arrival of cinema in terms of multimedia formations, like posters and booklets and songs, and the whole thing about watching cinema outside the movie theatre, of enjoying cinema outside the movie theatre, loving the cinema, taking that particular love to create social groups and to have a certain cinephiliac kind of public activity becomes also the archive of Indian cinema. It's a very important part of it. And I think this particular exhibition is in a way part of the wider definition of what cinema is outside and beyond the movie theatre. The process of making, consuming, sharing films that we've had.
तो इस फ्लोर पे जो है तुम अभी से डरते हो, हमने कैलीग्राफी वाला पीस जो है किया है। नून मीम राशिद की एक बड़ी नज़म है जिसको हमने यहाँ पे दिखाया, और ख्वाब तना कलेक्टिव जो है बहुत अरसे से ये काम करता आया है कि जो उर्दू, हिंदी और हिंदुस्तान और आसपास के जो पोइट्स हैं, राइटर्स हैं, उनको विजुअल कल्चर में सेलिब्रेट करे। ये जो तीसरा फ्लोर है, यहाँ पे जो है एक तरीके से इनकलाब की बात जो है हो रही है। यहाँ पे दहशत है, वहशत है और क़यामत है, और क़यामत तब आ रही है जब आवाम जो है, मासेस जो हैं, अपनी आवाज़ उठा रहे हैं। तो नून मीम राशिद अब अपनी नज़म में यही कह रहे हैं कि तुम अभी से डरते हो, हाँ अभी तो तुम भी हो, हाँ अभी तो हम भी हैं। शुक्रिया।
Vehshat, Dahshat, Qayamat. This is actually the third floor that we have, the third act of our story. What you get is, of course, this kind of ocean of television sets, and you'll get a whole sort of fantasy of how the cinema is produced. I mean, these are images that are created by the projectionist and that are created, if you like, even in the fantasy of the cinema itself. The posters that you get here are much more primary color, Kranti, Manoj Kumar's Kranti has now become, in the early 2000s, this is the Nyan Sagar Litho Press in Bombay again, but this is the new kind of aesthetic, where you get, this is very much in a late 90s, early 2000s aesthetic, much more, the reds and the yellows that you get, the Feroz Khan film Aag or Dosti Dushmani. I mean, I grew up when I was young with a film like Chor Machaye Shor, but I don't remember Chor Machaye Shor quite like this. Aya Tufan, this is much more primary color, all the kind of cross hatchings that you get, the way in which faces are there, guns, sexy images, horses, whatever, blood. You get a Mother India which has become a complete Daku movie. This is a film with a Nargis full of vendetta, and of course the mandatory splotch of blood on her cheek is standard to this. Insan Jaag Utha becomes almost like a kind of a Soviet socialist kind of poster that we have. I mean, Sunil Dutt is almost looking like a Chinese figure that's there. We are surrounded by sound. You can actually, from here, you can look down and see Okhla, our Okhla film, which looks almost from on high. And we end our exhibition with a series of references to Amitabh Bachchan. Nastic is, as Shiraz keeps pointing out, the irony of showing Nastic next to Coolie. You know, when you actually have, I think, the first line from the Quran, you know, the La ilaha illallah. I mean, I think they're saying that you don't make these kinds of posters anymore in India. This is a rerun of the original Kala Patthar that we have, but Diwar is a remake. This is actually a man called Himanshu Gola who has done this work. I mean, you know, what you get is very interesting, which is actually a kind of cutout of the original Bachchan image from Diwar, which was attributed to an artist called Divakar, who was responsible for some of Bachchan's most famous iconographies. But the rest of the images, and these are all cutouts, have been put together much more recently. We can move here to the actual introduction of Bachchan, the young Bachchan that's there. The sound has been done by Nilansh Mitra, as I was saying, and this moves to two very major sequences. One which is, you know, that famous line from Muqaddar Ka Sikandar ke Dard tera sathi hai, dard ko apna le, which you will get in a little bit later. And then from Jewel Thief, this Hoto pe aisi baat mein daba ke chali aayi. Nihal, who I want you to bring in here, ab kam se kam yahan to aiye, did the production work in this, and he sourced the television sets from old Delhi, which were all put together for this particular exhibition, that he managed to find people who could make it. It's very much part of this particular Delhi aesthetic. And he also got Fahim Bhai, who fabricated everything for us from below. So we've spoken about तुम अभी से डरते हो, हाँ अभी तो तुम भी हो, अभी तो हम भी हैं. शिराज, कुछ कहना चाहोगे?
बस पोइट्री की एक बात यही है कि पढ़ने वाले पे हर बार जो है कोई नज़्म, कोई कहानी अपनी तरीके से अपने राज जो है वो खोलती है. तो ये नज़्म आप जब किताब में बैठ के कहीं पढ़ रहे हैं तो अलग तरीके से सामने आती है, और ये यहाँ जब इस वक्त इस एग्जीबिशन का हिस्सा है तो अलग तरीके से आपसे बात करती है. तो जब भी मौका है तो आइए, एग्जीबिशन अभी 4 जनवरी तक है.
ओके.